Graduating after a law school can be quite a challenge. The bigger challenge is not to find a job, however, to find the right LLM college for you. Today, to solve this big doubt, we have with us the extremely talented and a very dear friend, Sushmita Patel, who is pursuing her LLM from Azim Premji University. Sushmita has also cleared the first round of Rhodes Scholarship, and she has also cleared Vermont University's entrance, although she did not take a seat there and she went for Azim Premji instead. So, Sushmita, welcome to the show. Welcome to an hour with LawSikho.
Thank you. Those were kind adjectives.
So, Sushmita, first of all, tell us something about your LLM journey. Tell us how did you go about it and how did you think on and pick up the law colleges first?
Uh, I graduated from National University Vishakhapatnam in 2017. That is last year. Uh, though I wanted to prepare for civil services and appear for that exam, I knew that I wanted to study more, that I wanted a master's not for the sake of a degree, but because I really wanted to be involved in research at some level. So I think it was around my fourth year that I decided that I want to pursue an LLM. And since the third year of my law school, I was particularly interested in environmental law. I decided that I would want to pursue an LLM in environmental law and or policy. So, uh, so from say my mid third year to the ending of third year and or probably the beginning of the fourth year, I started doing my research about where I ought to study or where I can study for environmental law LLM in India or abroad. So, so basically, the thought, the idea started in around third, fourth year, and everything I did from then onwards was trying to work towards that.
All right. So, Sushmita, tell me something that there is a lot of perception that goes around which says that one should pursue their LLM after gaining 2 years of work experience. So, what is the right time to pursue an LLM? Whether is it after you graduate, immediately after you graduate, or whether is it after 2 years of gaining some work experience and then going ahead for LLM?
See, it basically depends on why you're pursuing an LLM and what you ultimately want to do with that LLM degree. A lot of people I know choose to work before they go for an LLM, mostly because of personal reasons, because they think they can finance their own LLM. And most people just go with the blind notion that work experience will give you a bigger perspective, and that perspective is going to help you in uh, drafting your application or probably even studying at a later time. So ultimately, it's going to depend on why you choose to do a particular LLM and what for. Now, considering that I'm studying at APU right now, and a lot of people that I do know, as well as the cohorts that I belong to, are wannabe academics. Well, for people like that, they prefer to teach for a couple of years before they pursue a PhD because they think they have better chances at getting a scholarship at PhD after that. So similarly, people who decide to work before they apply for a master's also go on a similar perception that if I work in the same area that I'm going to apply for a master's in, that is going to aid my application. And that's a completely legitimate notion because ultimately you show on your application that you're committed to one certain thing and you've spent 2 years of your life or say 3 years of your life working in that particular area. And that is indeed a big asset when you go on to apply for a master's. But for those who prefer not to work and would rather apply for a master's immediately, I don't think they're disadvantaged in any way. I do agree that showing on your application or displaying in your CV that you have relevant work experience in the area of LLM that you're going to apply for is an added advantage. But I think I can say this pretty clearly that it's not a major disadvantage not to have a working experience either. I think it's all personal choices, and more importantly, it's about what you want to do with that LLM degree or why you're pursuing an LLM degree in the long run.
All right. Sushmita, there are a lot of universities that have come up in India, and particularly the national law universities that offer LLM after CLAT. So, do you think it's advisable to take up a national law university, or should there be other criteria to pick up an LLM university for yourself?
So I think I'm gonna answer it with the perspective of the previous question. It's going to depend on what for are you doing in LLM. I do know a lot of people who choose to pursue an LLM because they think an additional degree is an added value. And this is something that I do not believe in, neither do I encourage other people to take an LLM for this purpose. Now, well, if I were to answer this question in a little bit more personalized way, I chose not to do my LLM in a national university for the basic reason that I do not think I agree with their perception of legal education anymore. So, but similarly, there might be other people for whom an NLU LLM might be more valuable, uh, depending on where they choose to work or pursue higher studies after they finish their masters. So ultimately, I again repeat, you do know how in like routine interviews they ask you these questions about where do you see yourself after 5 years? I think that's a very pertinent question to ask yourself when you're deciding to do an LLM and from which institute. The institute that you pick to do your LLM is going to be really determinative of shaping your choices and what you are going to do 2 years later down the line. So, depending on what your work preferences are or what your higher studies preferences are, say after 2 years, after 3 years, that ought to be in fact determinative of whether you choose to do it at national law university or the other private universities of the country or even abroad for that matter.
Sushmita,
I'm
you've
not
told
sure.
me. Yeah, I think that pretty much answers the question. So Shweta, you told me that after you decided that you're going to go for higher education and you'll be pursuing an LLM degree, all your efforts in the law school they started channelizing towards that particular interest that you've developed towards pursuing an LLM. How did you go about it? What all did you do? What all activities did you take in order to prepare yourself for an LLM?
Right. So I think first of all, it's important that everybody at least has some sort of clarity about what they want to do their LLM in. Though, I mean, even if it's a normal BCL in Oxford or a specialized LLM at, say, uh, I don't know, NUS, I think it's important for everybody to gain some sort of clarity about what is it that they want to study in their LLM and therefore drive their choices into that area. For example, I was very enthusiastic about environmental law and policy. So I made sure that I had a good grade in environmental law. Uh, uh, we'll talk about grades and their importance later, but at least I realized that I needed a good grade in my core subject of environmental law. So I made sure that I had a good grade there. And then before this, before my third year of law school, I was never particularly interested in internships because I wanted to be a civil servant. And therefore, I saw no added value that internships would give to my future plan. But since after I figured out that I wanted to be pursuing a master's in environmental law and or policy, I figured that I needed to demonstrate on my CV that I have interest for this and I have tried to work in that area in some way or the other. So after trying to study for environmental law subject, then I started applying for places in the country that offered some sort of work experience in environmental law and policy. For example, I worked with India's first environmental law firm called the Environmental Legal Defense Firm. I worked with the Center of Excellence of the Ministry of Environmental Forest and Climate Change called the Center for Environmental Education in Chennai. I worked with the Environmental Impact Assessment Department in National Environmental Engineering Research Institute. And since I was also focused towards environmental policy rather than just environmental law, I also worked with the Foundation for Democratic Reforms. So, as mechanical as it may sound, I think once these were put up on my CV, I think personally that they played a very important role in demonstrating that I had interest in environmental law and policy, and I had driven 2 years of my law school in trying to work and research in that area. Though I did not really write research papers, I mean, I was never particularly enthusiastic about that. I did end up writing for the Indian Biodiversity Congress, but that was about it. So that was how I kind of channeled my CV and my interest, just to demonstrate that this is what I like and this is why you should, give me admission.
All right. So, Sushmita, I'm sure you must have shortlisted a list of universities. How did you research about them? Because I think when I was planning to pursue my LLM, though I did not do that, but when I was trying to pursue it, I just did a random Google research, and I had a list of universities, and I just thought I'd randomly apply to any of them. Was there any specific procedure or specific way in which you did the research?
Um, well, I think I also started out with Google, but I did it for two separate regions. I did one for abroad as well as one for India. So yeah, I think starting out with a basic Google research is obviously the best way to go about it, probably in my personal experience. But I used to read a lot of scholarly articles on environmental law and policy, and whenever I'd read these articles, I'd usually Google the scholar who had written them and what research center do they work for, and which university, and what are the kind of research that that university takes up. So I used to make that little extra effort to find out what scholars write in various universities. I mean, probably because my orientation is a little academic for that matter, and because I liked reading such kind of scholarly works, I think that really helped me in understand what is the kind of research that each university is doing. I personally was not enticed by rankings. Or, I mean, if you do a basic Google search, you're bound to come up, if I were to Google what are the best environmental law universities offering an LLM in the world, there are several lists that will come up that rank universities from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. I'm not saying those lists are not helpful. They've certainly been determinative of where I choose to apply and where I choose not to apply. I did have a couple of friends who helped me in that research in trying to locate what university is ranked where, because I did not do that personally myself because I didn't believe in it. But yeah, a Google search is a good way to go about it to understand rankings, but I think you need to do a more in-depth research that will also be determinative of why you're choosing to join that particular LLM program. For example, if I want to do an LLM in order to pursue certain research interests, I would be looking up at research facilities or the existing scholars at that university so that I can gain from them, I can learn from them, or I would be writing to my potential advisors there with, say, a research proposal for my master's dissertation. Or if people are looking for certain employment opportunities after an LLM, then how they choose the university would be dependent on that. But yeah, of course, a Google search is the basic way to start about it. And the second one would be mostly to talk to people. Now, I understand that it's not always easy to find people who are studying in that particular university, but I guess it's much easier now that social media offers you all those opportunities, especially because every university has a Facebook page, and they're very prompt in responding to, like, for example, for Vermont, I talked to a couple of Indian students who were studying there to ask what kind of electives are offered, or how is uh, the study schedule, and things like that. I think it's important that you talk to people to get a more personalized opinion of how the LLM is structured. And I don't mean just people on Facebook, But I highly recommend, and this is like a highly recommended thing, that you write to the universities that you come across. You write to their help desk, you write to their admission center, and they're always very prompt in responding to your queries. So you come across a university you think is interesting, I strictly recommend that you write to their admission center with your queries or questions so that you understand more about what kind of university that is. The response that they give you will tell you way more than what you can find out from their brochure or from their website.
But aren't there chances that the response that these universities would probably give would probably have a little bit of bias in itself?
Bias in the sense.
In the sense that if they're replying something, they would probably tell you in the favor of their own university. Wouldn't it be a little biased opinion?
Yes, yes, of course. See, at the end of the day, they're all of them are private law schools, and all of them want to market themselves. But I think we'd be, I mean, unless you can afford to like go to every law school and check it out for yourself, I think this is the most personalized form of communication that you can have with these people. I think like when you read their mails or when you're talking to them, I think as a person it is important to distinguish between what are their marketing gimmicks and what is it that they're actually offering.
Okay.
People who are studying there. You get a dual perspective, right? You talk to people who are individual disassociated entities studying as students, whereas you also talk to the admissions team that is a part of the system and is trying to pull you in. It just helps in like pulling in perspectives before you make a decision of whether to apply or not.
Okay. I have a question from Hardik Sabarwal right here, who wants to know that what is the intent of law firms towards students who are pursuing LLM and corporate laws? Say from abroad or India, would law firm hire LLM students?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the first part of the question?
He's asking you what is the intent of law firm towards students who are pursuing LLM and corporate laws, say from abroad or India. Would the law firm hire such LLM students?
Okay, I don't think I have much personal experience when it comes to law firms because personally I've never liked corporate law or had any sort of inclination to it. But I can probably answer that question uh, with a little perspective that I got from my own classmates at Azim Premji University, because some of them are happy corporate lawyers who have quit to come and study in LLM, and people who are going to finish this LLM and go back to corporate, uh, and even merchant recruits for my class. So so from what I have understood, and this is not from my own personal experience, but from the experiences that I've got due to the cohort that I stay with and learn from, is that yes, an LLM degree is indeed valuable, and I mean a degree is any day valuable, and I think they do look forward to seeing that degree, especially your dissertation work. Your dissertation at an LLM level is going to be really determinative of how interested and how hard you work on a research area that is going to really demonstrate your a research area of interest. And I know that potential recruiters here, I mean, at my university, have questioned people on their dissertation, and that is what has really enticed them into recruiting a potential candidate from my class. So
I think Hardik, that should answer your question. That the dissertation that you work on and also the specialization that you have will essentially determine how hardworking you are and will make you the right choice for a law firm. I think that should answer your question. Sushmita, you are one of those few people who got through one of the best universities in the world, University of Vermont, and then you just decided to let go of it and opt for Azim Premji University. What led to that decision, or how correct do you think at this point of time, now that you're about to graduate from a postgraduate from your Azim Premji University as well? How correct do you think that decision was, or what led you to choosing that decision?
Well, Azim Premji University is going to be very happy with the answer that I give now. That you probably might think of it as a marketing gimmick, but it isn't. The reason I choose to stay back in India and study in Azim Premji University is more so for ideological reasons. Let's not go there. That be too much of a personalized interview. But again, as I said, it's important that uh, I mean, everybody before they apply for an LLM or decide to do an LLM, it is important that you draw a roadmap for yourself about where you see yourself and what you want to do with yourself after you have an LLM degree in hand. And considering that I want to appear for civil services, and I thought staying back in India and studying at Azim Premji University would be one of the best choices for me. Now, why Azim Premji University in India, not anything else, would probably be a different question. But why choose to stay back in India is more ideological. And the second part of your question, I do not regret this decision at all. It has been one of the best places that I could have been in. And yeah, I highly recommend that people join if they want.
All right, Sushmita. So tell us that how difficult was that decision, apart from the fact that what were the metrics on which you decided that, okay, I'm going to, of course, that you wanted to pursue your civils from India and you wanted to study in India could be one of the reasons. But then, was there any other metric on which you decided that you're going to not go for Vermont University and stick to Azim?
Yeah, so the major metric was in fact ideological, so I will not go there. But so let me put it this way: what I would have got in Vermont, I still do get the same thing in Azim Premji University, probably at a broader level, a higher level than what I would have got in Vermont. So Vermont offered me an LLM in environmental law specialization, and Vermont is the best university in the world for environmental law. So, but the thing at Azim Premji University is that it is an interdisciplinary university. So I study in the School of Policy and Governance, and they have two more schools in the postgraduate campus called the School of Development and the School of Education. So the thing about masters in Azim Premji University is that due to the presence of many of these different schools in the same campus, we are offered electives that span across these different schools, and we have professors teaching us from other schools. So, for example, even though I'm doing a master's in law with a specialization in law and development, I have allowed my LLM to be structured in such a way by picking out electives from the Masters in Public Policy and Governance, thereby allowing for more of the policy realm to fit into my LLM rather than it being purely legal perspective. And another thing is that since you get to pick your own dissertation, I'm working on an environmental law and policy dissertation, so that's that. And apart from that, Azim Premji University mandates that you do a 9-month mandatory field project in which we just finished last week, and I was working on mapping land use patterns in the city of Bangalore, understanding climate change. So even though my specialization is in LLM and law and development, I have curated my LLM in such a way that it almost 80% of it is about environmental law and policy. And I get to study that from some of the best professors in the country and probably the world. And I get to stay back in the country. And I think the third most important thing is the motto with which Azim Premji University works, that it wants to work towards a just, equitable, and sustainable society. So everything that they teach, everything that you do in the university is focused towards that. So I get the same amount of credit, the same amount of benefits that if I were to pursue an LLM in Azim Premji than I would if I were to pursue it at Vermont. And the additional advantage is I get to stay back in the country and study for whatever I want.
All right. But I want to know it on a very general level. What is better to study in India or to study abroad for LLM?
Yeah. So, well, there is a general tendency that runs through almost everybody's head that whoever is able to pursue an LLM abroad is somehow intellectually superior or has some sort of superior educational status than compared to those that end up studying for a master's in the country. I think most of this is to go for the state of master's legal education in the country. For example, the national universities, I mean, it is an open secret that national universities treat their LLM students as secondary citizens. I mean, everybody who's studied at a national university knows that. And studying for an LLM in a non-national university might be a hard decision for some because they might think that I'm making a substandard choice by studying in a non-national university. So it's more so about the perception, but also about the state of post-graduation legal education in the country. But what is often ignored is that not all universities abroad are that great either, except for, say, the Ivy League and probably another 15 to 25 universities around the world. The rest, all of them are in shambles. Law school education is expensive abroad. It might, it hardly offers more. I mean, I'm talking about the mediocre law schools that most of us can be eligible to get in. I mean, all of us can't get into an Ivy League school, can we? I mean, it's a hard thing to get into. So then most of us would want to do a master's abroad would end up in these mediocre or state universities in the US or like city colleges in England, which I don't think are that exceptionally different from what we have in the country. So as much as I agree that the post-graduation legal education in India is in shambles, especially for the national universities, I wouldn't say it's that different from what the mediocre colleges offer abroad, except for, say, the title of a foreign degree that you can show off to the rest of the world. So if you're choosing to do a master's of law in India, there aren't many options available, and I don't think it's an individual's fault. I mean, apart from national universities, the most you can do is probably IB Kharagpur, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Disney universities, probably a couple of central universities like Rajasthan Central University. So there is a lack of choices, and I think that is what drives most people to go abroad. But if it is the temptation of a foreign degree that is tempting you to go abroad, then I'd highly not recommend it.
All right. Varun Sharma has a question to ask you, and Varun asks, should the focus be on the university or should it be on the field of interest that you want to pursue your LLM?
Should the focus be on the university or?
Should it be on the field of your interest as to,
Right.
whatever your interest is?
Okay, that is a good question. I think it's more of a personal choice. What do you value more? I mean, that's something that you've got to ask yourself. What do I value more? I mean, if I didn't like corporate law, for example, would I be happy studying corporate law at NUS because that's a big university and a big degree? Or would I be, if I like environmental law, would I be happy studying environmental law at, say, a city college in England? So it's more of a personal decision of what do you value more. And I do agree that the name of the university is going to be a huge asset in A, making connections, in B, as a stamp on your CV for your potential employers or for a PhD application. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to remain true to yourself. And that was what is going to drive your education as a whole. So if you want to study something because you want to be educated, I again I say it's a personal choice. I'd say stick to what drives you. And if it is the research area that is the subject that drives you, I'd say any day pick the subject over the university. But at the same time, what you but you see, there are certain things that good universities can offer you that not so good universities cannot offer. So you could like learn from the best university, come back and do your research in an area of interest. You could work around the system. But at the end of the day, if you're pursuing higher education, I highly recommend that you stay true to yourself because that is what is ultimately going to drive the research that you do and not an institution.
I hope, Varun, that answers your question. Sushmita, a lot of questions are flowing in, and I have to take all of them, but I will take them in a while. I want to know about you've applied for universities like Oxford University, University of Vermont, and all the Ivy League universities, along with a couple of other universities as well. What is the standard application procedure for applying to such universities?
Right. Okay. Uh, as much as they say that grades are not important, I'd highly recommend that you have a decent CGPA in your law school because I say this because uh, despite the fact that we all say, oh, we're elite liberals and we don't believe in marking and grades, I think that when they process your application, what grade you have is going to demonstrate how efficient you've been in your law school or how committed you've been in your law school towards the goal of academics. Since a master's degree or a PhD program is all about your interest in research and academics, it is important that you show to them that you have a decent grade that shows off on your certificate. So it's the grade. Knowing that an SOP is always important. A statement of purpose is something that every law school in the world will make and submit. And the next is an essay of sorts. Now, all of them don't mandate an essay, but I would say around 85% of law schools in the world mandate that you write an essay, preferably legal essay, preferably in the area of study, but they don't really mention that. They just say something that you've written that just demonstrates your writing skills or research interests. And apart from that, references are mandated everywhere. Sometimes they ask for academic references only. Sometimes they ask for academic plus work references. So if you have been working somewhere, then you could get it from your employer. Or if you're fresh out of law school or you're still in law school, then you could get it from the offices that you have interned with. So references, an SOP, an essay, a good grade is the standard things that every law school asks for. And since not all of them, but it is recommended that you either write IELTS or TOEFL also, because that will be important because some of them ask for it, some of them mandate it, and if nothing else, it will help you when you secure your visa. So these
All
are the
right, so
five
if I
things
get
that
it,
are there on every application that you will be going for.
so if I get it correct, SOP, reference, and essay is the standard, list of things that you would require to apply for an LLM degree. Along with that, TOEFL scores and IELTS scores matter too for some of the
Yes.
universities.
Yes.
You talked about
Well, the thing
references.
don't matter. All the universities have a basic limit. So if you touch the minimum, you're eligible.
All right. You talked about references, and we have a huge discussion lined up for the references too. But Nancy Jen has this question that does the college take into consideration the period of work experience with the boss who is issuing the reference letter, or does it matter if I give reference from someone with whom I've worked only for, say, some months, or should she complete 1 year of work to get the reference letter? There's a time. So basically, in
Okay.
short, in the time duration matters of the work experience that you have for getting a reference letter or not.
Right. So, well, at the end of the day, it's important how much the referee actually knows you. Even if you worked for a month one referee, or you worked with a year for another referee, but the referee who you've worked with for 1 month knows you better than the referee that you've worked with 1 year, that is going to reflect in the reference that they write for you. So it's ultimately important that you pick the referee that knows you the most. Now, a lot of people do suggest that, for example, when you're trying to do a double master's, like after a master's, you're going for another master's or you're going for a PhD, it is it's advisable that you ask a referee from your undergrad law school to write your reference rather than from a professor at a postgrad law school, because at a postgrad law school they have known you only for a year, whereas an undergrad professor has known you for a span of 3 years or 4 years, depending on what degree you pick. So that is the rationale behind it, that people who know you for longer are people who are better able to judge your capabilities and can therefore personalize the reference that they write to you. But more than whether they know you for long enough or not, is important how much they know about you, because that is going to reflect in the reference that they write. So
All
I
right.
think it's that's like a more important consideration. While time is of essence, how long they've known you is important. How much they know you is, I think, equally important, because that will reflect in the letter that they write to you.
All right. Although we have not spoken about roads yet, but I have received a question on my WhatsApp through an unknown number, which has a following question to ask you, and it's a pretty interesting question. I would also want to know the same. As you said, you did not write research paper when applying for LLM. Can you please highlight how did you highlight your research skills for roads application, as LLM is majorly about research?
Right. Thank you for that question. I think I've asked myself that question a lot of times. Like, I didn't write any research papers myself. How did they choose me, or how did any other law school in the country choose me? But I did write one research paper for the Indian Biodiversity Congress. So I picked like one, I wrote one and one good thing. That's about it. But I think what I've realized by talking to a lot of people who, whether it has been academic scholars who work at my university or other people, that when you apply for a scholarship or when you apply for a master's degree, what what they judge you most is on your motivation to do that particular thing. So, what motivates you to want to do a BCL at Oxford for roads? What motivates you to do a master's in US? So what is it that drives you is, if you're able to explain that to your potential professors or the admissions team, what is it that drives you? Why do you want to study with them? Why do you want to study that particular area, and why do you want to study it at that particular university? If you're able to sell this, I think that is what mainly gets you in. But at the same time, I do not say that I did not have anything on my CV. Even though I did not have research papers on my CV, I had relevant internship experiences. I had 4 environmental internship experiences that demonstrated in some way or the other that I was interested in this area of research. So, so research papers are a way to tell people that you like working on something. Internships are another way of telling people that you like working on something. Or you could have written a book or anything. So anything that demonstrates your motivation to study something, anything that demonstrates your motivation to join a particular university is the key factor that determines whether you get through an application, a scholarship application, or whether you get through an admission process. So it's not just
Uh,
about papers, it's the drive and the motivation that you look into the most.
Sushmita, Bridin Madhav has a very good question to us. He wants to know, and I was also about to ask you the same question. What are the key points that one should keep in mind to draft a good statement of purpose?
Right. I've often got this question from like a lot of law school seniors as well. I'd say make the most important thing in an SOP is that make it honest. There are at least 1,000 tutorials on the internet that will tell you how to write a good SOP, because that is what essentially drives the academic process in the Western world, not so much in India. You find 1,000 tutorials, but I think something that I have learned the most from my personal experience is make sure your SOP is honest. It does not have to be extravagant. It does not, most importantly, it should not be something that you aren't. I understand that an SOP, like a CV, you're trying to sell yourself, but unlike a CV where extravagance might turn out, I don't know, I'm not an expert in CVs, but I think the most important thing in an SOP is that you be honest in selling yourself. And apart from honesty, I think another important thing that I've learned in writing and editing CVs is that it's well, I've read a lot of CVs of people who have gotten through roads and people who have gotten through Ivy League institutions through few contacts and what is available on the internet. What I observed is that all of them have a powerful beginning. Now, by powerful, I don't mean necessarily anecdotal or something that starts with a quotation, but a beginning that makes you want to read the rest of the SOP. So always make sure that you have a good beginning, that the admissions team wants to read the rest of your SOP about why do you want to do this. So always be honest, always have a good beginning, and most importantly, make sure that it is not a replication of your CV. It's very tempting to just duplicate your CV into your SOP because those are the list of achievements that you want to brag about, or those are the list of achievements that tell people about yourself. But remember that an SOP is very different from a CV and that you do not mix both of them up. While a CV can talk about your credentials and your history and your experience pertaining to your academics or curricular activities, an SOP should be more about the stories behind those credentials, the stories behind those motivations, the stories behind yourself. Basically, make sure your SOP is a story of your honest self that makes people want to take you in, that makes people give you that opportunity that, you know, this person should be doing this master's, this person should be given this research assignment because they have the drive to do it. And and also since this is not like an autobiography that you're writing, it is important that you subtly insert elements of why you want to do this into your CV, into your SOP, sorry. Now, why I say this subtly and not explicitly, like write in your CV that I like your university and I want to study in your university because of A, B, C, D. Instead of doing that, because that would be like very unprofessional, I'd say subtly try to insert elements of what drives you. What is the motivation behind choosing that particular university? Which is why you should also not send out the same SOPs to 5 institutes that you're applying or 6 institutes that you're applying, because I recommend that you personalize it for the university that you're applying. So personalization, be honest, have a powerful beginning, make sure you're distinct, make sure it's about the story of yourself, and make sure that you do not mix it up with your CV. I
All
hope that
right.
helps.
I hope that helps you, Brihan. And Sushmita, also Harshit wants to know that when the ultimate goal of somebody is to go and settle down in abroad, and practice there eventually, then how much does an LLM degree help, or whether how much does an LLM degree help, or whether the LLM degree helps right after your LLB or again after your work experience?
Oh, I must apologize that I don't think I'm experienced or equipped enough to answer that question because I do not have adequate experience in practice abroad. Neither have I indulged in such kind of conversations with people who work abroad. So I must really apologize for that question, for not being able to answer that question. But I must admit that I must confess that an LLM degree is valuable any day. It is just an LLM degree demonstrates to the world that you took an additional year of your life to study the law. So once you're able to show that to people, any LLM degree is a valuable asset. And I think whether it's law firms in India or abroad, they will look forward to you showing that kind of interest.
All right. Sushmita, we'll quickly talk about scholarships. Now, a lot of people look forward to getting scholarships and they want to get scholarships or they want to get some sort of funding uh, to aid their LLM degree. I really want to know first of all, what helps you to make a cut in the first round of roles? How did you cross the first round, which is the application round? And what are the other scholarships that you looked at, you probably received, or how do you go about getting scholarships, and how do you zero down on scholarships or funding for that?
Right. So I think before applying for any scholarships whatsoever, I think from a year before you want to apply, say mid of fourth year or even the starting of fourth year, it is necessary that you keep a planner or a diary of all the scholarships that are there in your particular area. Now the internet's like a black hole, so you find like a lot of things for each university, for each country, what the government of India offers, or what the university themselves have with regard to scholarships. So every university will have a scholarship page in which they give you links of what scholarships are applicable to a particular program, as well as most universities will not need you to make a separate scholarship application, because once you apply for the university, you will automatically be eligible for some of their scholarship needs. But that's the easy thing. But what is the more difficult thing is that a year before you decide to apply for scholarships, it is necessary that you plan out what scholarships you want to apply for. Now, some scholarships have like an early bird phase and then a later phase. And since there are so many scholarships available, there is not a dearth of them, I must tell you that. It's important that you table out what are the deadlines for all of these and start applying them as soon as possible. So from a year before, from you start applying for scholarships, it is important that you note down that these are the available scholarships for a particular program in a particular country for a particular university. It'll be a long list. Trust me, that's a good thing, of course. It is important that you make that list and then only start applying. Without making that list, you would be lost in a web of scholarships because you might be eligible for some, you might not be eligible for some, because a lot of scholarships, for example, mandate that you have a minimum amount of CGPA grade, or some scholarships require that you have work experience. So it is important that you pool all these scholarships, then filter out those that are for you, reject those that aren't for you, and then go about applying. And this process, trust me, is not at all easy. I myself had a huge Word document in which I had tabled out everything that I had to do. And trust me, it's a lot of work because the application processes sometimes take long. You have to write in, and most of the scholarships require that you write a separate statement of purpose. And the statement of purpose that you write for an LLM application will undoubtedly be different from a statement of purpose that you write for a scholarship. So the first advice that I would give when you're applying for scholarships is start early. It's, it's the key mantra that you start early when you're applying for scholarships. It's very important because the deadlines most of them are way before the admission process for graduate school start. So the basic thing that you do is start early.
All right. Sushmita, I have a question from Rebecca, and this was the first question that was asked throughout, which is what should one try to achieve in the undergraduation for scholarships? Does moods and research papers help?
Right. Okay. So I understand that all law schools place a lot of emphasis on research papers because they somehow seem to demonstrate to the world that you're interested in research and things like that. But what I find appalling about the undergraduate law school structure is that most of these research papers are not genuine research. They're mostly reproductions of existing literature or existing body of scholarly work. So what kind of research papers are you writing is important. But at the end of the day, as I think I said before, when you're selling yourself as a potential postgraduate student, anything that you do in your undergraduation should demonstrate that interest. For example, Rhodes, for example, looks for an individual's commitment to the society. And a lot of scholarships look for that. When scholarships fund you with money, when they're basically pouring money into you, they expect you to give back to the society in some way. And when scholarship panels evaluate your CV, the important thing that they look for is, are you looking, for example, some of the mandates that you return back to your country? and work for your country rather than settle abroad. A lot of scholarships do mandate this. So once you have identified what kind of area that you want to pursue your LLM in, or what part of the world you want to pursue your LLM in, and whether you need a scholarship for that or not, I think first of all, according to their requirements, it is important that you mold your activities in undergraduate school. Now, if in case you have been if you have been like open-minded about what LLM you want to pursue, or have been finicky about what specialization I want, then I say do those things in undergrad law school that demonstrate your interest for learning of any sort, that demonstrate your interest for research in any sort, as well as demonstrate your uh, enthusiasm in working towards things that are also non-purely academic. So any good thing about you that sells is what you can do in your undergrad school. Even if it's playing basketball or debating or mooting or writing a book or being on the editor's panel for your law school's journal, anything that demonstrates that you haven't whiled away those 5 years of law school but have done something with yourself is, trust me, good enough.
All right, Brihan. Before Brihan, I take your question up, and I'll take Nancy's question up as well. Uh, Sushmita, I really want to know that how can one go about recommendations? Because even Nancy asked that does the background of boss or any person who's issuing a recommendation letter to you, how much does that matter? Does it matter whether it's from a famous lawyer or a law firm, or it does not, or the background of the recommender does not matter at all, or how much does it matter?
Right. This is a question that a lot of people have, and I had myself when I was trying to look out for recommendations. I was caught in a dilemma myself. Whether should I take a recommendation from a famous person because that would be like, oh my God, that would add so much value to my reference, or should I just take it from one of my professors who's taught me for 2 years and knows me so much better than this famous person whose reference would add so much more value? And I think uh, uh, Rhodes as well as Vermont has taught me that, and as well as with a lot of people that I've spoken to, has taught me that your referee should need not be an accomplished, famous person that uh, that people would be vying to get a reference letter from. It is not necessary. Ultimately, what is looked for in your reference letter are things about you that they cannot get from an SOP, that they cannot get from a CV. They're looking for perspectives from a person who has known you and can that is the admission scheme, can learn something about you that they cannot learn through a CV or an SOP. So I think the foremost or the first requirement that you look for a referee is how well that referee knows you and how well that referee is able to put their knowledge of you onto paper. I think that is the foremost requirement that every law school graduate ought to look for in their referee. While I understand that flashy titles of a partner at a law firm or the chief justice of a high court are like tempting, what's it, positions from which to seek recommendations. As much as they might help in the gravity of your application, I think the foremost important thing that you have to look for is how well this referee knows me and how are they able to put this knowledge of theirs of me onto paper. I think make sure that's your foremost consideration, and then how famous are they? What are their accomplishments? And like how good are they as a person? I think put this all as in number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But the first one is how well do they know you?
Sushmita, Nancy has another question, which is can you tell some key points that a reference should have?
Okay, so well, I think my best references came from my professors, and my second best references came from my internships. So, so I think so. When I talked with my referee, I think one thing that we both agreed that my reference should demonstrate is again what my SOP and CV will demonstrate, that somehow I've had an inclination or an interest towards the area that I'm going to pursue in my LLM or my area of research or my area of interest of research, etc. So make sure that the reference that your referee writes, somehow that referee is able to sneak in your information or your motivation towards studying a particular subject or in a particular area or at a particular place. Make sure that your referee is able to like intelligently sneak that in and not make it very obvious and explicit. Now, second most important thing is what it should have, what a reference should have is, for example, if you're applying for a scholarship, I think there are certain personal observations or personal characteristics about yourself that you cannot talk about in an SOP or talk about in an SOP or in a CV. But a third person, from an external perspective, can comment on those personal characteristics of you. So make sure that your referee makes a note of those personal characteristics that are unique to you, not just unique to you, but that constitute you or in any way demonstrate your interest to the society, to research, to that subject area, or just characteristics that are determinative of you as a person. So make sure that your referee also puts that into their reference that tells the world about you from their perspective. I think those two are the most important things that admission teams look for in a reference.
All right. Nancy, I hope that answers your question. I have another question on WhatsApp from the same person. She asks you, there are scholarships which are provided by the government outside the university we are applying for. Can you please list down some specific scholarships Indian government provides for law students to apply in foreign universities?
Scholarships that the Indian government provides.
Yeah.
I think the Indian government unfortunately does not provide as many scholarships as the UK or the US government provides, but there are, as far as I know, there are 2 or 3 scholarships that the Indian government provides if you belong to a certain category or a class. I'm sorry, I'm not able to name them right now, but I think the most obvious scholarship that we ought to be applying for by the Indian government is the Commonwealth Scholarship that allows you to study for in the UK on a fully funded. It's a fully funded scholarship. I think it pays you around £14,000 as a stipend and pays for your airfare, clothing, and food. So the Commonwealth Scholarship is something that I would highly recommend everybody to apply. I mean, if you get through, you'll be called a Commonwealth Scholar, which I think is a good thing to be called as. But unfortunately, the Indian government does not offer a lot of scholarships that I definitely would know of.
All right. Sushmita, Ashwin wants to know that whether is it okay to pursue an LLM from a private law college? What are the advantages for that if you're not selected in any other national law university for pursuing it?
Oh, it's absolutely okay to pursue an LLM from private law school. I mean, national law universities, I mean, no offense, but I don't think private universities are much less in any manner than, say, 90% of the remaining national law schools. But also amongst the private law schools, I think it's important where you decide to choose to do your LLM. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the state of postgraduate legal education, or even undergraduate legal education, but let's not go there. Postgraduate legal education is not a very rosy scenario in the country. So it is important that you do pick what is right for you in terms of what they offer. But just because you do it from a private law school in the country, you're absolutely no less. I mean, it's that mentality of an inferiority complex that creeps in because you belong to a private law school. I think that needs to go. So I blame a lot of it on the law school's quality. But I think personally, it's completely okay. But make sure that you cherry pick which private law school that you want to go to. And that cherry picking is an important process that you must not avoid.
All right, Sushmita, I'll be asking you the last set of questions in one question. So this is a question by Brihan and Rebecca, and which is Brihan comments that he has seen that it's slightly easier to get higher grades from certain private colleges as compared to national law universities. And Rebecca's question is, does your UG college really matter while you're applying for an LLM degree? So I would club the questions and ask you, is it okay if you're from not a very renowned university? Until and unless you're performing well in the exam, is it okay for you to do that? And how much chances are there to get into, let's say, an Ivy League university or a good college for an LLM? How much does the background of your UG college matter?
So I get it. The basic underlying question is how important is your undergraduate university, right?
Yes, yes, you're right.
I would be lying on your face if I said that what college you belong to is not important. I'd be lying if I said that. But unfortunately, yes, what institute you belong to definitely matters because not only does it influence your learning, your perspective, but unfortunately, since every human being is subject to biases and prejudices, you're automatically judged to a certain extent based on what university you come from, no matter how dumb or how exceptionally intelligent you are. Yes, it is unfortunate that what university you belong to is important. But while I agree that it is important, I must say that it is not something that you cannot overcome. I mean, what university you belong to might be a liability, might be an advantage, but when it is a liability, it is not something that you cannot overcome. Despite what university you belong to, what are the kind of activities that you undertook during those 5 years? What are the things that you could accomplish? What is it that you could learn out of the whole experience is important. And if you're able to demonstrate that in your application about what you could do in the past 5 years, despite the fact that you belong to a university that may not be the best in the country, if if you're able to demonstrate and if you're being able to utilize yourself in those 5 years or remaining 2 years or 1 year, it's not something that you cannot overcome. Yes, it is sad that what university you belong to does matter. I'd be lying if I say, I mean, it's not a written rule that it matters, but I think that perception does matter, but it is definitely something that you cannot overcome. It's all up to you how you deal with that situation and how you overcome it by demonstrating about, despite certain things, how you have accomplished certain things.
I think you're the perfect example for that because given the fact that you come from National University Vishakhapatnam, which is a relatively newer national law colleges, and people didn't know about that as much, you managed to get through some of the great universities and you managed to crack the first round of those. I think it totally depends on how you nurture your CV and how you're able to showcase what kind of learning you received out of that experience. Uh, Thank you so much for joining us today, Sushmita. It was a pleasure talking to you. I hope all your questions, all your answer, you've got the answers to all your question. Everybody who's watching us live. Tomorrow we will have Sarang Khanna with us, who will be talking about judicial clerkships and how to go about it, how to go about performance and the benefits that you'll get out of it. Do not forget to join us tomorrow from 8 to 9 only on an hour with LawSikho. I am Aditya, your host. And do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Do press the bell icon for regular updates. Thank you so much, Sushmita, once again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Good night.
Bye. Good night.